Hello and a very warm welcome to Samiksha IS Academy. I'm Anil Naidu, and as part of today's session, we'll be looking at an interesting topic. Why would I say it is interesting? Because let me give you an example. When was the last time you opened a social media application or a digital platform and felt that this isn't as good as it used to be? Something might have changed, right? So that is the topic I'm discussing today. When we say, for example, Instagram used to be an application where we used to share pictures, admire pictures, and follow our friends and family members. But now it has turned itself into a commercial platform where it is circulating or prioritizing some short viral content as real. Similarly, if you take example of YouTube not many years back, you used to sit and watch several videos of your choice with ease. But now if you want to watch any content on YouTube, you have to sit through unskippable ads unless you pay for it. Yes or no? So what is the whole thing? If you take, for example, the Twitter platform, the so-called initially, it used to be communicated as an information sharing platform where you used to gather knowledge, or it used to be a platform to interact with famous personalities or to discuss about global. But now it is teaming up into a fraud scamsters who were into it. So all these, what do you think has changed in the recent times with respect to usage of these digital platforms or social media apps? One thing that has changed is user experience degradation. Our user experience has changed. There is degradation in the quality of content that we are watching. So the central vitality of our topic is how these social media platforms and various digital applications were acting detrimental to the user experience. So this term, which is called as enshittification, has been in order to bring traction for the kind of user experience degradation that is happening across various social media applications and digital platforms. So this particular topic of enshittification was coined basically by a Canadian called as Cory Doctorow. So he was a Canadian who is believed to be digital activist, technological activist, and he is also an author. So he is fighting for this digital rights activism. So this Cory Doctorow, he is the first person to coin this, where he has explained that in the recent times, various social media applications and digital platforms were undergoing a systematic worsening with respect to the quality of services they have delivered. So they are worsening over the time. That is what he has meant. So why there is decline in the user experience? Why there is compromise on the kind of digital quality services that these platforms were providing to the user? All this has been elaborated under a single term called as enshittification. So this is what is enshittification for our basic understanding. So now if you look at other provisions, other impacts, how this phenomenon of enshittification works, we have to understand why it is happening. We understood how it is transforming. We are visibly looking at it in regular time. So how this happens? It happens across three stages, three fundamental stages. The first stage is the user first stage. In this first stage, the platform, it initially caters to the users. In order to build confidence, in order to build loyalty of the users, they prima facie face users as the first. So user first stage, they will be good with the users in the first. The second stage in the process is business first. Once they were good with the users, while evolving, they act opposite to that of users. They abuse the users and they prioritize giving importance, or they work advantageously towards their business customer. In this particular stage, the focus shifts from the user, then they focus on the advertisers, the paid promotions, the business supporters, the business customers. They will be prioritized over the users. Even in this particular stage, even at the cost of user expense also, they will be prioritized. So business first is the second. And the third stage is self first. Once in the first stage, they prioritize users, they build their platforms, they have their base. In the second stage, they sideline the users and they have given importance to the businesses. And in the third stage, they think of themselves. This is the self first stage, where the platforms, in order to extract the whole value, they primarily wanted to attain profit out of their own platform. So customer satisfaction, business satisfaction, all these become sidelined, and they prioritize, they claw all their ownership of their platforms towards themselves. Individual centric, self first is the third stage, where both the groups were neglected, leading to decline of social media platforms. That is how eventually they die out. That is why there is a famous saying, that all the social media applications and platforms are dying a slow death. This is the three-stage approach where digital platforms in this digital era, all the platforms were subjected. There might be several reasons why these online platforms will be adhering to these kind of practice. So enshittification happens across these three stages. Then we need to understand why this happens. Why do social media firms, applications, or digital platforms do this kind of act? No one will be in a position to destroy themselves. Self-destruction is not a mode. You can course correct it in order to be relevant to the needs of the customer. So you have to ensure customer satisfaction. User experience should be your priority. But despite doing it, why these platforms all follow this deliberative process of enshittification? Why? Because there are several factors. The first factor is profit first business model. Once these platforms were established, they wanted to maximize their revenue. In order to accentuate their revenues, they depend heavily on ad advertisements, paid promotions. That will obviously give them profits. The profit motive is first such important rationality. Why this process happens. Secondly, algorithmic control. Several Instagram or Facebook, all these are fed by algorithms, where rather than genuine content, they will be promoting the paid content or some viral content. So the algorithmic feed is what is given to these platforms. This could be the second reason. Thirdly, we can talk about the limited competition that is available. We do not have large number of big technological firms where competition is ensured in this particular digital space. So only few players were providing all the service. So this could be another. There is monopoly of digital tech firms in our country and by and large across the world. Then fourthly, user dependence. It is highly impossible for any user to downsize their platforms, to exit from these platforms and use some other platforms. We are all used to certain popular platforms. It might be Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, everything. It has become very popular. We do not find any alternative user base. All this could be the fourth. Fifthly, we can say there are also various weak regulations. When I say weak regulations, there are no stringent provisions. No one cross-check the exploitative rules and regulations, the exploitative practices that were propagated by these big technological firms or social media applications. All these are the reasons why enshittification as a process happens. Then, after understanding this, in order to give you some contemporary example, for that matter, on a regular day-to-day basis, how this enshittification process is manifest. It is manifesting through several ways. Let's say, for example, you talk about social media. When you talk about social media platforms, you can take examples like your Instagram. You can take examples like Facebook. So primarily, when you open an account on Instagram or Facebook, the major purpose for which you opened is in order to make sure that you share some photos, in order to follow your friends or family members, and these platforms have to show you the feed of your close ones, your near ones or dear ones whom you follow. But nowadays, if you look at these Facebook and Instagram, they are promoting several content which is paid, which is very much viral, where our interests, our choices will not be going into those domains, but it will be popping up with all those commercial, which is the manifestation of enshittification process. Secondly, keeping aside social media platforms, if you take, for example, various streaming and entertainment, if you look at the streaming and entertainment platforms, when we say streaming and entertainment platforms, it can be your OTT platforms, it can be your YouTube, or it can also be anything like your Spotify. All these are streaming and entertainment platforms. If you look at the kind of advertisements that were coming up in these streaming and entertainment OTTs or Spotify, it is literally ad intrusive practices that these technological firms are doing up. Why? Because they are making us to ensure that you take up some subscription plan where these advertisements were not intruding your content reach. So it is nudging us to get into the paid subscription. If you are unpaid, it is not making you to have a hassle-free experience to access the content in those platforms. This is one example. Even for that matter, if you talk about e-commerce platforms, there are several e-commerce platforms like Amazon. So these e-commerce platforms like Amazon is going through this process of enshittification. Why? Because if someone wants to sell a product in Amazon, you can directly freely list it. But now it is not showing your items in the list. Only if you pay for the services, only with paid listings, then you can get your product listed in the top hierarchy. Subsequent to this, even accentuating this problem, it is even coming up with its own products, half the cost of what other customers, third parties were providing. And it is self-preferencing it. When it is self-preferencing it itself, there is no competition, there is complete monopoly, and there is unbiasedness in the visibility and listing of the products in these e-commerce platforms also. All these are against to the practices of competitive industry. That is happening in the digital space now. So these are the recent manifestations which we could imagine as contemporary examples of enshittification process. Now, after understanding all this, why all this happens, we have seen. Finally, moving ahead, we have to also try to analyze what is the impact of this enshittification process. What is impact? The day-to-day problems that we might feel is the basic impact. For example, as the users, from the user side, as you and I face more advertisements and less genuine content. This is the first basic prima facie observation we get. More advertisement and less genuine content. Secondly, creators lose visibility. Why? Because if you are a creator, you are coming up with some kind of innovation, but you do not have the reach. Why you don't have the reach? Because you are not into paid promotions. Only if you are paying for your content, you can reach to maximum audience as possible. This could be the second impact. Thirdly, our privacy is compromised. Why? Because the kind of data, the personal data that we are giving, these big tech firms, they are targeting the users based on their choice. So personal data of individual and user is also compromised here. This is third impact. Fourthly, obviously, the user trust will decline. When we are fed up with unnecessary content and feed, which we are not interested to have access to, it will lead to some kind of frustration, and it will also lead to some kind of misinformation which is not relevant at all. So these social media platforms cannot have the loyalty and the confidence of the users because of this process. Finally, it is also leading to digital inequality. When we say digital inequality, this is not giving scope for the smaller firms to come into existence. So there is a lot of inequality happening in the digital era also, digital space also. So what should be the way forward? We could see the whole exercise of enshittification as user experience degradation. When we say user experience degradation, it is also having its connection or consonance with moral degeneration. How these corporate big technological firms are downgrading its practices. They are not ethically favoring. Ethical practices were not being adhered by the social media platforms, which is leading to user experience degradation and moral degeneration also. There has to be certain stringent norms in lines with data protection, in lines with general data protection regulations, and also there should be corporate regulations as well. How these big technological firms and social media applications conduct their duties in an ethical manner. How the regulatory policies were adhering to systematize the whole process in which they are functioning, so that it will not have any kind of biasness in terms of providing services to the customers, or there should be a moral balance, ethical conduct on behalf of all these big technological firms, so that we can establish a balance between the profit maximization and customer satisfaction, which is the welfare of that could be the bottom line of this topic. All right. Thank you so much.